Ukrainians established a beachhead at a village only a few kilometers from the buried Space Ark at Oleshky Sands National Park. Billionaire elites are building bunkers to protect themselves from solar activity and earth changes. Ashton Forbes offers compelling evidence over flight MH370 satellite video, but there are still questions over its legitimacy. US Space Command achieves full operational capability. David Adair visits Area 51 and interacts with an ancient alien electromagnetic fusion containment engine. Combined Space Operations Initiative involves 10 nations. Announcement of a world-first wild communication experiment overlooks precedents that were classified and weaponized by the US Navy. Activating superhuman abilities to deal with an ET-controlled planetary simulation. Tua Coulson explains that elements of the US government have made contact and reached agreements with non-human intelligence. German research study recommends humanity prepares for 4 separate ET first contact scenarios. Joe Biden signs into law the National Defense Authorization Act for 2024 that includes passages from the gutted UAP Disclosure Act.
You're listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla, your source for the uncensored truth regarding the human, extraterrestrial, global, and political agenda. Click the like button and subscribe to this channel. And now, here's Dr. Michael Salla.
Welcome to the December 23rd edition of Exopolitics Today, the week in review. And there has been quite some developments over the week concerning exopolitical issues. So let's begin by this tweet. And again, if you want to get references and sources that I discuss, then just go to my Twitter feed. That is twitter.com/Michael Salla. In this situation report by the Drive online magazine, it's pointed out that Ukrainian soldiers are questioning the policy of maintaining a beachhead at the village of Krinko on the east bank of the Dnipro River in Ukraine. And the beachhead comes at a great cost in manpower, so people are asking why, Ukrainian soldiers, why are we dying to maintain this beachhead? Well, this is where we get into the location of this beachhead, and it is, and here's a map. This is the article in the Drive, the online magazine. And so you see Ukrainian Marines using small boats to ferry supplies, equipment, and personnel to the east bank of the Dnipro River that divides Russian and Ukrainian forces in the Kherson region. And what is very interesting here is this particular diagram. And what it does is it shows you the location of the beachhead near this village of Krinky, Ukraine. So here you have the Dnipro River. You can see my cursor, and it shows you the Dnipro River. And on the kind of east bank, or the southern bank of the Dnipro River, that's Russian-controlled territory. The Ukrainians have established the beachhead, and they're maintaining it at great personal cost. Now, why are they doing that? People are asking why. And I think the answer comes from something that is just adjacent to it. And you can just make it out in this image here. You can just see Krinky is this village with the pink dot around it. But just below it is a white circle. That white circle represents Oleshky Sands National Park, and that is where the Ukrainian Space Ark is located, according to information that was given to JP, the US Army insider that I've been working with since 2008, and also Elena Danan. She got information from the Galactic Federation that there is a buried Space Ark there. And that is what is a factor. It's not the only reason, but it is definitely a factor in Russia's special military operation into Ukraine, and also explains why it is that the Russian army, one of the first actions it did was to launch a military operation from the Crimean Peninsula to the Kherson region and overtaking the Kherson city, and that was the first major urban center overtaken by Russian forces. And that was very interesting because previously the only military action, or the major military action, was in the area of the Donbass region, involving the breakaway region. So when Russia launched its military foray into Kherson from the Crimean Peninsula, this was overtaking territory that was not then under any kind of military situation. There wasn't a dispute involving that. So, and I believed that was because of this Space Ark. So that takes me to an article that I discussed. Let's go here. Let's go back here. All right, let's close that window. So this is an article from March 3rd, 2022, where I first presented the information from JP and Elena Dinar about the Space Ark buried under Oleshky Sands Nature Park. And so there you see, that was the white dot right next to the beachhead that the Ukrainians established. And a rough estimate that I did was that it was only about 8 kilometers away from the beachhead. So very close. And I think this is more circumstantial evidence that one of the major factors for the Russian military intervention into Ukraine, and why the Ukrainians have been fighting so ferociously to retake the Kherson region, is that they are really in reality fighting for control over this area, sitting directly over a Space Ark that has been buried there for thousands or tens of thousands of years. So very interesting where that beachhead was established. Okay, so here's something Jordan Sader, who I've worked with him in the past during the Corey Good days, and he is he's a very interesting figure. He has achieved a level of notoriety because of some of his critiques of people in the truther community, and I think it's very interesting. His modus operandi, because I think there is a place for asking people for sources and information. I think there are too many people in the truther community that just give very long-winded stories about all these things that are happening all over the world, involving the white hats, involving taking out deep underground military facilities controlled by the black hats, and rescuing children, or whatever it is. And there's a lot of people that are putting out this information without any sourcing. And I think, that is important, that is pointed out. I think it could be done in a way that doesn't ruffle feathers, but Jordan Sader doesn't seem to mind ruffling feathers. But nevertheless, he brings up a very interesting story here about these billionaire elites building doomsday bunkers all over the planet. And he goes through a number of reasons why they might be doing this, but the one he supports is a micronova event in the next decade or so. And that micronova event has been predicted by a number of researchers. Some of those researchers include Suspicious Observers. That is a very prominent website that examines solar activity and has presented lots of detailed research studies showing that solar flare activity has been responsible for cataclysmic changes on Earth in a cyclic method going back hundreds of thousands of years. And so that is information well worth looking at. I personally think that predictions of a micronova and of Earth changes, reversal of the magnetic pole causing a reversal of the geophysical pole, those things, to my mind, are definitely mitigated by consciousness. And so if humanity's consciousness rises fast enough, then I think those kinds of changes are going to be significantly mitigated, because I think there is an element here of homeostasis. So that's the term that James Lovelock introduced to describe how the Earth restores balance to itself during periods of time when there are problems with the Earth's surface. And I think at the moment, the rate at which the Earth is being polluted, the oceans are being depleted, forests are being destroyed, Earth's kind of resources, mineral resources are being mined and plundered, that there are so many factors that we can point to say that the Earth is out of balance. But I think there's also a very important global awakening that is happening, and that global awakening is being helped by visiting extraterrestrials. And as we move into 2024 and that process accelerates, then I think these Earth changes or these solar events that could at one point have really devastated life on the Earth, that I think they will be severely mitigated or significantly mitigated. Okay, so here's a very interesting piece of information concerning Ashton Forbes. He did an analysis of a satellite video of the disappearance of MH370 that showed some kind of portal technology circling around the craft. And he did a video interview with Dave Zed. And what is kind of very interesting here is that this portal technology, this is something that seemed to be captured in the video. I'm going to try and find it for you. Okay, so here we go. So you can see that the plane MH370, and in this supposedly leaked satellite video, you see 3 orbs circling around it and it disappearing at some point. And so obviously this is a very remarkable video satellite. And Ashton Forbes, I think he presents a good case for why this is genuine, that this is the video, satellite video is genuine. And it is certainly very compelling. And I think that his analysis of the possible military whistleblower who was detained shortly around the same time that this satellite video was released is very, very interesting. Now, at the same time, Kim.com offered $100,000 to anyone who could prove that the satellite film was faked. And so what happened is that someone did come up with a debunking explanation for it. And so this is an article. Whoops. Visit anyway. Let's just go. Visiting is suspicious. Okay, so MH370 portal videos officially debunked. Kim.com. Okay, so this is where you have someone who claims that the video was faked. And what he did was he came up, he says he found a still shot of the sky somewhere in an area over Japan showing Mount Fuji. Now, Kim.com thought that this was a compelling rebuttal of the information that Ashton Forbes had presented. And Ashton Forbes has responded to this, and he has said that the still shots showing this cloud formation over Japan, that actually appeared after the satellite video was released, not beforehand, which is the claim made by the person who officially debunked, or claims to have debunked, the MH370 video. So at the end of the day, it is still contentious. Apparently, Kim.com has not paid out the $100,000. Now, I don't know if that's because he's had second thoughts. He hasn't said anything, but certainly it is a fascinating development. The debate still isn't over, and so we will see who proves to be correct overall, because I think Ashton Forbes has done really very good work in putting together a strong case, but still this debunking using this photo of the sky over Japan with Mount Fuji in the background, does seem to kind of undermine that. But so there's a rebuttal to that. So definitely well worth following that. Here's another story. US Space Command has achieved full operational capability. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means that it's now, quote, fully up and running to handle its mission of conducting space operations and protecting American and allied assets and interests in space. So I think that, we can look into that and read into it that it's more than just leading allied military forces in space. I think it's also signaling that Space Command is capable of handling interactions and negotiations with visiting extraterrestrial civilizations. Because if you think about it, and I know some of you may think, well, can we accept that there are extraterrestrial civilizations visiting our solar system and that they're interacting with humanity? Okay, let's just accept that. Who's going to be representing humanity? It's certainly not going to be SpaceX. It's not going to be NASA. The United Nations doesn't have a space program, but it's going to be something like US Space Command, which is conducting these joint military operations with similar space commands from other major nations. And in 2021, there were a number of deep space missions led by Space Command to meet and greet extraterrestrial fleets arriving from outside of our solar system, ushering in a new age and agreements. So I think achieving full operational capability, I think, means that Space Command is now fully set up and equipped to deal with visiting extraterrestrial civilizations, to forge agreements, and to coordinate the nations of Earth in what in the future may be significant space threats. So that will be a very interesting phase as this becomes open source, or at least we have open disclosure of these secret space programs and different extraterrestrial civilizations. And I think Space Command has been set up to be the tip of the spear in dealing with all of that. Okay, so on January 8th, this is an announcement. The Exopolitics Institute offers 3 sets of courses every year in the fall, spring, and summer. It offers courses that last for approximately 14 weeks, and you can register for these courses and do either 1 or do 5 and earn an Exopolitics certificate. And so on January 8th, the spring semester starts for the courses. And here, what you get, I'll just mute that. So here you get an explanation of the different courses at the Exopolitics Institute. There are 6 courses, and this is something that is well worthwhile if you want to make exopolitics something that you specialize in the future. The exopolitics courses, they are very useful for you to be able to get ready for what is coming in terms of a lot of public interest, and you being fully equipped in terms of knowing the history, knowing the literature, knowing the concepts, the terminology, and so forth. So the exopolitics certificate is very helpful for that purpose. All right, so let's go to the next story. This is my second part of the interview series with David Adair, and in this, in part two, we cover, or he discusses his visit to Area 51, where he encounters this ancient alien electromagnetic fusion containment engine, which was part of a spacecraft that was billions of years old, and that this craft crashed on Earth. I recall it was a couple of 100 million years ago, and that the consciousness of that craft is called Pithalum. And Adair describes his encounter with the craft. This is something he's described in earlier interviews. But in this particular interview, he goes a little deeper and describes how Pithalum jumped from the craft into his body and said that it was going to use his body as a lifeboat, that it would be something that would be with him for the rest of his life, which helps account for the extraordinary things he achieved during his life. And it also predicted that in the future, there would be a fleet of extraterrestrial craft arriving in our solar system that would be from the same place, that the same group of extraterrestrials. So presumably, Pithalum is associated with the Cedars. The Cedars is this ancient group of 24 civilizations that a number of contactees have talked about. I think the first reference, one of the earliest references to that, you can go back to the Council of Nine readings from Phyllis Schlemmer in the 1970s. She wrote a book, The Only Planet of Choice, and she talked about 24 elder civilizations. There is also the information from Elena Danaan talking about the 24 cedar races. And I think that the arrival of these elder races, who are millions of years old or billions of years old, that actually matches what David Adair says he was told by Pithalum, that one day it would use his body as a lifeboat until the day when the extraterrestrial fleets arrived. So very interesting. So that interview, you can go watch it on a number of platforms on exopolitics.org. Okay, so now we are going to look at this particular story that involves 10 nations that are now part of the Combined Space Operations Initiative. And in this story on defense.gov, quote, "We are working towards the long-term goal of true combined military operations in space that outpace the threat and prevent the escalation." So the real purpose of this of this Combined Space Operations Initiative is to combine the military space programs of both nations with the highly classified Solar Warden, and that is a Navy secret space program that was set up in the 1970s and 80s, and the Air Force also has its own secret space program. And so this Combined Space initiative involves all these nations combining their space commands, or what they call Space Command. In the US, it's called Space Command. Other countries may have different names for it, but combining all of these in a way so that you have the means in the future of revealing that these programs have kind of like interstellar capabilities because they are going to be incorporating elements of the Solar Warden program, which has been run by the US Navy for over 40 years now. So this is a very important initiative. Includes a number of major nations, the five echelon nations, Australia, Canada, the United Kingdom, the US and New Zealand, and also includes other major European nations like Italy, France and Germany, and more recently, Italy, Norway, and there was a third nation that just recently joined, that escapes me at the moment. So far at the moment, there are 10 nations who are pooling their military assets in space in this combined space operations initiative. So that, I believe, is going to become the hub of what in the future will be called Starfleet or something like that, if we believe that Starfleet was in fact soft disclosure, and I think it was. So here's a story. US scientists announced the success of a world-first whale communication experiment and say it will help develop protocols for future ET contact. So here you have this story in Science Alert. So scientists contact whales in this first communication experiment. So it describes their protocols and how to do how this communication with the whales was established and how that can be applied to extraterrestrials. Now, the problem is that communications with cetaceans, and whales are cetaceans along with dolphins and porpoises. Dr. John Lilly in the 1960s, so we're talking over 60 years ago. 60 years ago, he developed communication protocols with cetaceans in the 1960s. So Lilly was communicating with dolphins and also establishing similar protocols for other cetaceans such as whales. And his work was immediately classified by the United States Navy and then weaponized. And this was confirmed to me by a fellow researcher, Dr. Michael Hyson. So he was living on the Big Island of Hawaii, and the Big Island of Hawaii has been, up until recently, a great place for being able to research cetaceans because you have a lot of wild spinner dolphins there, and you also have you also have the humpback whales there. But nevertheless, he confirmed that the Navy did classify the research involving communications with cetaceans that John Lilly had pioneered, and that this had been weaponized. And why have they kept this secret? I think the reason is that the whales are the record keepers of the planet, or at least of the oceans. So whales are the record keepers of the oceans, and the deep state didn't want the public to communicate with them. And I lived for 17 years on the Big Island, and during that time I got to swim with the spinner dolphins hundreds of times, and also got to swim occasionally with different types of whales. And amazing experience, and lots of people who had those kinds of interactions said that they were communicating with the dolphins, with the whales. And what happened was that increasingly over the years, NOAA, that's the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, they clamped down on this. They tried to stop people swimming with cetaceans in the wild, and that's actually, they succeeded during the COVID. during COVID, when everyone was in lockdown and people couldn't meet, they rushed through these regulations that banned people swimming with dolphins. And that was one of the factors that led to us, my wife and I, deciding to leave the Big Island. But communications with cetaceans does happen, can happen, and the whales are the record keepers of the oceans, and the deep state does not want people swimming with cetaceans in the wild because they know that there will be downloads, information downloads, where people will get awakened and have the records transferred into them. So they've been banning it and trying to get people to swim with captive dolphins, which is very different. Those animals are tortured. That's the reality of it. Okay, so let's move on to the next story. So this was a story concerning the UAP Disclosure Act and just how little support it had in Congress. So what happened was that it was co-sponsored by Senator Chuck Schumer from the Senate Majority Leader and Senator Mike Rounds, a Republican, and there were two other sponsors of it. So they sponsored it. It was introduced into the National Defense Authorization Act for 2024. But then when it went over, but then there was no lobbying to have something similar adopted in the House. It was just announced at the last minute by Senators Schumer and Rounds and adopted into the NDAA for 2024 with nothing similar in the House version. And there was no lobbying of House members to have something similar adopted by the House of Representatives. No lobbying at all. And that does raise the question, well, he proposed, Senator Chuck Schumer being the Senate Majority Leader, that's a very powerful position. It would have been very easy for him to just get on the phone with his Democratic alternative in the House of Representatives and say, look, this is a very important initiative and I'd like you to support it and get something moving there in the House. But nothing like that happened. And so in this, what emerged was that only 7 members of the House of Representatives were even aware of the UAP Disclosure Act, which shows just how little lobbying was done by Senator Chuck Schumer. So even though he ostensibly championed this, he did nothing to get it actually passed in the House of Representatives. And so this raises a number of alternatives. Because I think Schumer is a deep state asset, and he's certainly someone that is beholden to the military-industrial complex. So why did he do this? Why did he participate in what was essentially a bait and switch? So the bait was the UAP Disclosure Act that he proposed, but then at the very end, it was gutted, and what was accepted into the NDAA for 2024 was something very, very different. So why do this elaborate bait and switch? Well, my guess is there are 4 possibilities. The deep state is planning some kind of event, a false flag event to frighten people, a UAP psychological operation that's intended to raise funds for the military-industrial complex. So yeah, you can just frighten people by this unknown threat out there interfering with military facilities and so forth, and that leading to a lot more funds going to the military. We saw that with those 3 UFOs that were shot down by NORAD in February of this year. Third possibility, a major distraction from Biden's scandals. So this could be something that could distract people. I mean, if you take it to its logical conclusion, if this reaches the level of a national security threat, you could actually impose martial law if these UAPs are a big problem, national security problem. And fourth, to get ahead of what's coming. And what's coming is that extraterrestrial motherships and space arks will be revealing themselves because they look at the planet Earth and what they see is the mass consciousness of humanity wants disclosure. People are ready, people want it, but the leaders are holding it back. And so, as far as the extraterrestrials are concerned, they look at the Earth's consciousness and they are in communications with the leaders, and they say, "Look, your people want it, so we're going to do it because we are responding to the consciousness of the planet, and the people represent the consciousness of the planet, and you can't stop this." And so I think this is where the deep state realizes it can't stop what's coming, so it wants to get ahead of it, spin it in its own unique way. Okay, Steven Greer. Okay, he did a tweet recently where he's proposing his 4 books: Extraterrestrial Contact, Hidden Truth, Disclosure, and Unacknowledged. Now, I promoted his tweet and his books because, I mean, I do have my differences with Steven Greer over extraterrestrial motivations. He believes that all extraterrestrials are benevolent, and it's only humans where you have malevolent, benevolent, that distinction. It's not something that involves extraterrestrials. So we disagree over that. But when it comes to his analysis of special access programs, the extraterrestrial cover-up, I think he's spot on that the deep state has been reverse engineering retrieved technologies for decades and been successful in doing so. And that's a far cry from people like David Grush, Bob Lazar, Eric Davis, that are being promoted by many UFO researchers currently and getting a lot of mainstream attention. They're all saying that, yes, extraterrestrial spacecraft have been recovered. Yes, they are being stored in corporate facilities. And yes, corporations have been trying to reverse engineer these, but they've been unsuccessful. And that's BS. And unfortunately, people are not looking at the work of Steven Greer and my work. I mean, I've got 9 volumes now on secret space programs. All these secret space programs, the entire 9-volume series is predicated on the successful reverse engineering of captured extraterrestrial spacecraft and agreements with different extraterrestrials. So what we're being presented in the mainstream media and by this group associated with Grush, Lazar, Davis, and so forth is, to my mind, a limited hangout. So I think in that regard, Steven Greer is a grade above those pushing the current UAP narrative that these non-human intelligent piloted UFOs haven't been successfully reverse engineered. Here's an interview I did with Dr. Kimbery McGeorge, and she is also one of these lifelong contactees, contacted very early on in her life. But what I found fascinating in her work is that she has identified that we live in a planetary simulation that has been set up by extraterrestrials, and that we are part of different soul families that are incarnating here on Earth. And because we are star seeds connected to other star seeds that make up these soul families from different extraterrestrial civilizations who have within us all these latent abilities and frequencies. And all we have to do is to activate those frequencies, and we can achieve these powers that would appear to normal people to be superhuman. So the whole kind of Marvel comics, DC comics, all these superheroes, these embody different capabilities, different abilities that we have inherently within us that we can activate as we become connected to our true identities and to the realities of this planetary simulation. That in a way, this is very much a kind of matrix-like situation that we are in the planet. So very interesting. She's been working for over 25 years, helping people as a naturopathic doctor, energy healer, remote viewer, paranormal expert, and consciousness teacher. And so she's been doing this work for on her third decade now. And her view is that, yes, we live in a planetary simulation. And I think it's well worth understanding this idea of us living in a planetary simulation, because these physical bodies that we inhabit, they are avatars, they are vessels for our consciousness or soul matrix to enter into. I mean, every night when we go to sleep, our soul matrix enters and leaves. And because of temporal dilation and so forth, we could be a space commander on a ship doing all sorts of things, spending all our time there, and then coming in here while our space commander body is going to sleep and transfers to here. So there are many ways in which we can envisage a fragment or part of the soul consciousness of us being in an extraterrestrial body being relocated to Earth into a 3D physical body that is part of this planetary simulation. So I think that is well worth examining that possibility. So Dr. Kimbery McGeorge. Here is Tua Coulson, and he is really on fire when it comes to the UFO issue. He is dropping more and more truth bombs the more he becomes familiar with the literature and dives into it. He knows what is going on. So let's listen to him here, what he has to say.
It's my personal belief, based on a fair amount of evidence, that they're not aliens. They've always been here. And I do think it's spiritual. That's my view. So, and again, it's not provable, but based on the evidence, I think.
I'm with you.
Absolutely. But if the U.S. government has in fact had direct contact with these beings, whatever they are, I've already told you what I think they are, and has entered into some sort of agreement with them, which is the claim of informed people, I would say. Whether they're right or wrong, I can't say conclusively. But if that is true, I mean, it's a very, very, very heavy thing.
Yeah. A lot of people say interdimensional beings.
Right. I want to ask: Are angels and demons, or how would you describe these beings?
You know, these are, again, I'm getting into the realm of conjecture, so I just want to say that flat out.
Entity.
But one thing I know for a dead certain fact, having seen it, is that there is good and evil, that we are being acted upon at all times. And I think every person can feel that in himself. I mean, there are moments when you are moved to do things that are much better than you actually are, and that are also more evil and destructive than you actually are. You are subject to forces from outside yourself. That is absolutely true. Now, we can argue about what they are, but every person in the room, if he's reflective, will tell you, yes, I know what you're talking about. And so there are forces that are not human, that do exist in a spiritual realm of some kind, that we cannot see, and that when you think about it, sort of make you think we live in an ant farm.
Yeah.
Right? And that's that is real.
Okay, well, that is Tua Coulson, and I think he is really breaking new ground in saying that the US government has made contact with these non-human intelligence, and non-human can mean extraterrestrial or inner earth beings, or these kind of interdimensional beings, or time travelers. So that's something that he believes contact has been made and agreements have been made. Well, that is really quite a development, because that is something that I think is absolutely correct, that agreements have been reached with these non-human intelligence or extraterrestrial visitors. And I think Tucker would benefit if he started to do research into the 1954 and 1955 ET contact events involving President Eisenhower at Edwards Air Force Base and Holloman Air Force Base, that these meetings did happen. There's a lot of evidence, data showing that they did happen, and agreements were reached. Okay, so here's an announcement. The Galactic Spiritual Informers Conference for 2024 is going to be held in Denver, Colorado from September 27 to 29. So that is really good news. I've been to the first two GSIC conferences, and I'm very happy to be part of the third one that is coming up. And so that is something that I encourage you to take a look at. It is really the premier contactee event of the year. You have the top contactees appearing side by side, and the audience is fantastic. We had close to about 800 people in the 2023 event. So I think this event in Colorado will be even bigger. So I hope you can join us there. And there is an early bird special, so well worth registering and getting that early bird special. Okay, so now let's look at this story involving the National Space Council. And that is a meeting that was the National Space Council meets on a regular basis, at least once a year, and it is setting the priorities for for NASA and the space community in the United States. So this is the third meeting of the National Space Council that's been held during this Biden administration, and it is really promoting international cooperation. It is focused on the Artemis Accords. It is saying that these accords provide the foundation for international cooperation in space for decades to come. And also it announces, the Space Council announced that that the Artemis 2 mission that is going to be held in 2024, that soon after that there will be international astronauts that will be participating in the landing on the moon. So the Artemis Accords are these bilateral agreements involving 31 nations, including the United States, that have all signed agreements with the US. So think of the hub of a wheel, and the US is the hub of the wheel, is at the center, and you have 30 spikes going out to 30 other countries, making 31 altogether that are part of the bilateral Artemis Accords. And so all the Artemis Accords provide the framework for international cooperation. The United States is fully on board in terms of NASA expanding the Artemis Accords, which make it possible for international cooperation in space in terms of tourism, mining, research, establishing scientific projects, and also military cooperation. That's where Space Command comes in. So you have, on the one hand, the Artemis Accords, which represents the civilian aspect of international cooperation in space. And on the other hand, you have the Combined Space Operations Initiative, which are focused around US Space Command, and currently that has 10 nations. We discussed that a little bit earlier. That's the military aspect. And these two go hand in hand because the critical feature of the Artemis Accords, which is why nations want to sign on, is that if you sign on, that means that any national program that is established for space involving your nation's resources or corporations that operate out of your country, that those are going to be protected through the Artemis Accords. And the Artemis Accords has something called safety zones. So if you, for example, say Belgium. Let's pick a country like Belgium, small country. They want to set up some kind of research outpost on the moon, and they establish that research outpost on the moon. Now, because they're part of the Artemis Accords, if another country comes in, let's say a country like China says, oh, actually, we want to establish a base right there where you are, and we want to exploit that area. Well, under the Artemis Accords, you have this thing called a safety zone. And if other countries or other actors, it doesn't have to be a country, could be an extraterrestrial civilization, if they establish operations in a way that threaten your operation, because the Artemis Accords has these safety zones, then what will be the Combined Space Operations Initiative, which will evolve into a Starfleet that can come in and protect you. So that's why nations are signing on to the Artemis Accords. So we are having the kind of like development of something very similar to this kind of Star Trek future that Gene Roddenberry envisaged. Okay, so here's a German research study that describes four scenarios. So here you have space.com, and it's a story here describing these four scenarios, pardon me, that was led by this scientist Andreas Anton of the Institute for Frontier Areas of Psychology and Mental Health in Freiburg, Germany. And the four scenarios are the signal scenarios. So that's the signal scenario that is something like electronic radio signals that are scanned from these planets. You're looking for a radio signal from these planets that indicate extraterrestrial life. So radio waves move at the speed of light. So radio waves from Alpha Centauri will take 4.5 years to get here. So once they arrive here, then you can see whether or not there are signs of intelligent extraterrestrial life from Alpha Centauri. So that's one scenario where first contact could happen. The other one is the Techno signature scenario. So, for example, the James Webb Space Telescope detects telltale signs of an extraterrestrial civilization on a distant exoplanet, and so that could be also used for announcing first contact, because if the James Webb Space Telescope says we now have indisputable evidence of techno signatures on a particular exoplanet, say in the TRAPPIST system. In the TRAPPIST system, they find signs of these techno signatures that would be conclusive proof of an extraterrestrial civilization that's established on one of the planets in the TRAPPIST system. So that would be the TRAPPIST, that would be the techno signature scenario. The artifact scenario, where you send a mission, the Apollo missions obviously established, or you look at the different missions to Mars and the Artemis missions that are coming up, that presumably ancient technologies can be found on the moon, on Mars, or elsewhere in our solar system. So that would be the artifact scenario. And finally, there's the encounter scenario. That's when alien spacecraft show up over the Earth, and here they are. They're there, and contact is made. So that's the first contact. So, I mean, I think this is a very good article in describing different ways in which first contact can be made, and it does open people's minds to these possibilities. So that's good. The problem, though, is that these contact scenarios have already happened. They happened even a century ago. You can go back to the early 1900s when Nikola Tesla and Giuliano Marconi established radio communications with extraterrestrials from within our solar system that had bases in our solar system. And then you go to the 1940s and you have these missions that were conducted by a German space program, where they encountered alien artifacts on other bodies, the moon and Mars. And of course, ET contact has happened on Earth. I mentioned the meetings that President Eisenhower had at Edwards Air Force Base and at the Holloman Air Force Base. So these things have already happened decades ago, many decades ago. So it really is a question now of when those in control of this information decide to disclose to the global population what they've already known for decades. And so, and as I mentioned earlier, I think this is something that can't be stopped because extraterrestrials, they can monitor the planetary consciousness and they know we are ready. And the elites are scrambling to get themselves ready because they know if they don't disclose in time, then the extraterrestrials will. And 2024 is predicted to be the big year of disclosure. So this takes me to the final story for this week in review, and I'm doing this on Friday afternoon, and this has just been announced that Joe Biden, that bloke that is sleepwalking in the White House, that some people call president, anyway, so this bloke, Joe Biden, signed the National Defense Authorization Act for 2024. I don't know if there are many fans of Joe Biden that watch my podcast. If you do, well, let's just say we have to agree to disagree on whether Joe Biden is sleepwalking or not as this alleged president of the United States. So he is he signed the National Defense Authorization Act for 2024, and that includes provisions from the gutted UAP Disclosure Act that was gutted of what was in reality a controlled disclosure initiative. And, you know, there were people that were critical of it. I thought it was actually quite good in terms of laying out a framework for disclosing the truth about extraterrestrials in a way that could be controlled by the deep state or by the political institutions. And so that, I think, was something that had teeth in it in terms of this 9-person review board that was initially proposed that could use the power of eminent domain to get its hands on whatever corporations had in their archives or in their laboratories, that it had the power of subpoena to request records from corporations or any government or military agency to get their hands on these records. So it could have been a very powerful body, especially if you have a president that is supportive of disclosure. Now, Joe Biden, in his signing of the NDAA, I mean, he made clear that he is not going to abide by anything within the NDAA that in any way jeopardizes national security. In other words, he's just reaffirming that if there are records, UFO records, that the release of which might jeopardize national security in some way, then he will veto their release, even though there is this 25-year automatic declassification period for records once they're established to be declassified under this Records Collection Act that has been now incorporated into the NDAA for 2024. He can still veto that as the president. And so this, I think, is one of that is where even the UAP Disclosure Act was weak, because if you had a president who was beholden to the deep state, to the military industrial complex, they could have just vetoed any of this UFO information coming out. Now, what happens after the 2024 presidential election? Can there be a president that would be more supportive of this? Hopefully there will be. Could it be a President Robert Kennedy, for example? I think that would be very exciting because he would be someone that would, I believe, be very open to the truth about his father and uncle being assassinated because of their knowledge of the UFO issue, or at the very least, President Kennedy was assassinated because he made disclosure of UFOs a very important issue that he was striving for behind the scenes. So a President Robert Kennedy, I think he would be great for disclosure. So we'll see what happens with the 2024 presidential elections and who gets in. Right, well, that covers it for this week in review. The next week in review, we will cover some of the top stories for 2024 that because that'll be the last in the year. So I look forward to the next week in review, which will close out 2024. Big things are happening that will close out 2023. Big things are happening for 2024. I look forward to that. And so thank you for joining me. Again, if you're watching this on YouTube, remember to like and share this video, because YouTube is using algorithms to suppress this kind of content now. So you sharing and liking this does make a difference. So thank you and aloha.
You have been listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Join or start a conversation in the comments. Take the time to explore the vast library of best-selling books, webinars, and podcasts by Dr. Salla. Visit exopoliticstoday.com.